You are standing in line at a grocery store. Nothing special about the store. Fluorescent lights, a conveyor belt, the small sound of items being scanned. The woman in front of you is maybe 80 years old. She has a small cart. Bread, milk, a rotisserie chicken, some canned soup. She is friendly to the cashier. She has clearly shopped here before. She swipes her card. Declined. She looks at the machine. Tries again. Declined. She opens her purse and looks inside it the way people do when they already know what they will find. She counts out what she has in cash. It is not enough. She starts putting things back. The soup first, then the chicken. She keeps the bread and the milk, and she pays and she leaves. And the line moves forward, and most people in it are already looking at their phones. You do not know her name. You do not know what just happened. But something did. Because this morning, for the first time since 1940, the United States government did not send a Social Security payment. Not delayed, not reduced, not under review. The trust fund that backs the largest income program in American history reached zero overnight. The checks that were supposed to go out today, 67 million of them, did not go. The deposits that tens of millions of Americans treat not as a benefit, but as a paycheck, the money they paid into for 40 years, the promise the government made them in exchange for a lifetime of work, gone this morning without warning. And the woman at the grocery store was the first thing you saw. She will not be the last. Here is what Social Security actually is, because most people under 50 have never had to think about it carefully. It is not a savings account. There is no vault somewhere with your name on it holding the money you paid in. Every dollar you contribute through payroll taxes goes out almost immediately to someone who is collecting right now. Workers today pay for retirees today. It has always worked this way. It was designed to work this way. A transfer between generations, renewed every month, sustained by the collective agreement that no one who worked their whole life should end it in poverty. That agreement, as of this morning, has been suspended. The immediate numbers are staggering. 49 million retired workers, 6 million survivors, widows, widowers, children who lost a working parent, nearly 8 million people with disabilities who cannot hold a job. For almost half of all elderly Americans, Social Security is more than 90% of their monthly income. Not a supplement, not a top-up. The thing that pays the rent, the thing that keeps the lights on, the thing that buys the bread and the milk when there is not enough left for the chicken. Within hours of the news breaking, the calls start. Landlords across the country begin receiving calls from tenants they have rented to for 15 years. The deposit did not come. Can we have a few more days? The calls are polite. The callers are embarrassed. These are people who have never been late. People who budgeted around that deposit with the certainty of a utility bill because for them, it was a utility, as reliable as gravity. And now it is not there. And they are calling and trying not to sound frightened and mostly failing. Property managers near retirement communities, near assisted living facilities, near the counties where the median age is 65 and the economy runs on fixed incomes, they are not having one of these conversations. They are having hundreds of them. By early afternoon, the property management associations are on the phone with their banks, asking questions nobody has a good answer to. The pharmacies start calling their suppliers. Medicare Part D, the prescription drug benefit, is linked directly to Social Security for most recipients. Premiums are deducted automatically from the monthly benefit. When the benefit stops, the deduction stops. And the system that was quietly keeping millions of Americans enrolled in their drug coverage begins sending error notices in bulk. By day 2, pharmacists across the country are looking at patients who are suddenly, without warning, uninsured. Patients who need insulin, patients on blood thinners, patients managing congestive heart failure who have been stable for years because they took their medication every morning, and who will stop being stable if they stop. One pharmacist in Tucson describes it later as a quiet emergency. Not sirens, not chaos. Just a line of people, one after another, being told their coverage could not be verified. Most of them nodded and left. A few of them cried. One of them asked if there was anything she could do. There was not. Not that day. The hospitals are overwhelmed by day 5. Not from accidents, not from anything sudden, from the accumulation of every appointment that got quietly postponed, every symptom that got rationalized away, every refill that did not happen because the money was not there. Emergency departments in Florida, Arizona, Nevada, the states with the highest concentrations of elderly residents, begin logging a different kind of admission. Preventable crises, conditions that were being managed until they were not. A 2020 study in the American Journal of Public Health tracked what happens to elderly patients when their prescription coverage lapses even briefly. Hospitalization rates rise. Mortality rates rise. Not dramatically in the data, dramatically in the rooms. These are not statistics lying in the beds. These are people who were fine a week ago. The consumer economy notices within days. Social Security recipients, as a group, spend roughly $700 billion a year on goods and services. That money does not flow into the stock market. It flows into grocery stores, pharmacies, diners, hair salons, local hardware stores, the small medical practices that exist in small towns because there are enough older patients to sustain them. These are not glamorous businesses. They are thin-margin businesses. They are the kind that close when foot traffic drops 15% for 6 weeks. The owners of those businesses are doing math this week they have never had to do before. How long can I carry staff? What do I tell my landlord? The questions do not have good answers yet. The questions are being asked in towns where the local news runs Social Security stories every night, and where the same 3 retired couples used to come in for breakfast every Wednesday, and this Wednesday, 2 of them did not show. Congress convenes an emergency session. The chamber is full. Everyone is present. And the conversation that has been quietly deferred for 30 years, the one that every politician in Washington understood was coming and chose not to initiate, is now happening on live television with a hard deadline and 67 million constituents watching. The math has been public for decades. The Social Security trustees publish an annual report. Every single report for the past 20 years has said the same thing in careful, measured language. The trust fund faces a long-term financing shortfall. Without legislative action, the program will be able to pay only about 77 cents of every promised dollar by the time reserves are exhausted. The reports were read, the hearings were held, the statements were issued. The legislation was not passed. Because every possible fix requires one of 2 things: higher taxes or lower benefits, and both of those things, done honestly and directly, cost votes. So the fix got deferred. Year after year, report after report, until the date in the report that used to say 2035 became this year, and the year became this month, and the month became today. And the woman in the grocery store put back the chicken. The proposals come fast now that waiting is no longer an option. Raise the payroll tax cap. Currently, workers only pay Social Security taxes on their first $168,000 of income. Everything above that is untaxed. Raising or eliminating the cap would close roughly a third of the long-term gap on its own. Adjust the benefit formula for high earners. Gradually raise the full retirement age for workers currently under 50. Apply modest means testing to reduce benefits for retirees with significant other income. Combinations of all of these, phased in slowly enough that no single generation absorbs the entire cost. None of it is painless. None of it is popular. All of it has been in the policy literature for 20 years. Emergency bridge payments are authorized within 96 hours, funded through Treasury borrowing, the same mechanism used during every crisis from 2008 to the pandemic. They go out late. They go out at 90 cents on the dollar while the legislation catches up. But they go out, and then something quieter starts to happen. The faces on the news change the negotiation in ways that actuarial tables cannot. A woman in Phoenix who is 78 years old and has $140 in her account. A man in West Virginia on disability since a back injury in 2018 who has no other income and no realistic path to one. An 81-year-old widow in Florida who raised 3 children on her late husband's survivor benefits and who is watching a senator explain on television why the fund ran out. Political will, it turns out, is not a principle. It is a threshold, and the faces cross it. The long-term legislation that follows is not perfect. It is compromised and negotiated and impure the way all real legislation is. But it closes the gap more honestly and more sustainably than 30 years of trustees' reports ever managed to force. Here's where it gets counterintuitive. The small businesses in retirement communities that seemed most vulnerable are among the first to recover because their customers come back. The woman who put back the chicken comes back and buys it. The Wednesday breakfast couples come back to the diner. The prescriptions get refilled. The appointments get rescheduled. The floor that Social Security provides is not a luxury. It is structural. It is the thing that makes a local economy predictable enough to sustain itself. When it returns, even partially, even imperfectly, the recovery begins almost immediately. And something else shifts, something in how people understand the program itself. The generation under 40 that had been quietly told by financial advisors and personal finance podcasts and general cultural assumption to plan as though Social Security would not exist when they needed it. That generation watches what happens when 67 million people lose that check for 4 days. They watch the grocery store lines. They watch the emergency sessions. They watch the faces. And they understand something that no trustee's report ever communicated. This is not a government program in the abstract. It is the difference between the woman buying the chicken and the woman putting it back. Historian Václav Smil writes that modern societies are far more brittle than they appear because efficiency has been maximized at the expense of redundancy. Every system optimized for normal conditions becomes fragile when conditions change. Social Security, imperfect as its math became, was designed with the opposite principle. It was designed as a floor, as the thing that remains when everything else fails. The job disappears, the savings erode, the health collapses, the market crashes, the floor remains.
The crisis forces the floor to be rebuilt more honestly, more durably, with the numbers finally matching the promise. Here is what this means for you. The next time you are standing in a grocery store line and the person in front of you is elderly and moving slowly and counting their change at the register, you will think about this, about what that monthly deposit means, about what it costs when it does not arrive, about the chicken. You will see the FICA line on your next pay stub differently. The money that leaves your paycheck before you ever see it, labeled Social Security and Medicare, going somewhere you never think about. It is not going into your account. It is going into someone's rent, someone's insulin. The rotisserie chicken that an 80-year-old woman should not have had to put back on the shelf in front of a line of people looking at their phones. That is what the program is. That is what it does. That is what breaks when it stops. And the next time someone tells you Social Security is just another government program, just another line in a budget, just another debate for another election cycle, you will know exactly what they are talking about, walking away from.